This will be the last time I ever speak on this subject, regardless of what happens next, what's said next. I will be remaining silent from here on, but I felt like I needed to clear a few things up and respond to Nikki's allegations against me and a lot of the lies that she told. For one, the reason that I took the video down wasn't because I felt like people didn't believe me. At the point where I turned the comments off, the comments about her were horrible. And I felt like a hypocrite because I had asked people not to harass her, and that was exactly what was happening. So I turned the comments off. Obviously, that didn't make a difference, and it became a little bit overwhelming. It went viral, and I decided to take the video down. And ever since, I've been off the internet. I haven't even been checking the comments. Friends have been telling me what's been going on, but I've just stayed offline ever since. I've decided to respond to some of Nikki's allegations and to also put the video back up, because everything that I said in that video is true and can be fact-checked. I only spoke about things that I have receipts for. I knew people wouldn't believe me. And unfortunately, this is why most men who've been through some of the stuff that I've gone through never speak out, because they're scared people won't believe them. And if they don't have evidence, people don't believe them. If they have evidence, people question, well, what did you do first? How were you at fault? What did you do to cause the reaction that you got? And that's pretty much what people have been saying. Nikki told a lot of lies, and a lot of the lies that she told were lies that she knows I have the receipts to back up and show that they're lies, which is the most confusing part of it all. Like, for example, she said that if that intervention order had have gone through, that she wouldn't be able to come within 200 meters of the children. And this is entirely untrue. As you can see, this is from the intervention order, and it speaks about children. And I'm going to read it because I want to get the wording correct. It says, "This order allows you to communicate about your children or spend time with the children. You can only do this in a way that is currently allowed by a current," and it has a few different options, but ours would be B, parenting agreement. At this point in time, we had a temporary parenting agreement that her lawyer had written up and I had agreed to under protest. And this was the one that had me as an every second weekend dad. The reason that I had agreed to this was because I had been advised if I didn't agree to this, then I may not be able to see the children at all until I sorted everything out. So I decided it was better than nothing. So had this intervention order gone through, the parenting agreement would have stayed in place. I still would have been an every second weekend dad, and she would have continued seeing the children as often as she already was. The only caveat was that if they were to witness family violence, that there would be consequences, legal consequences. And I wanted the children protected and sheltered from witnessing family violence. And that's why they were on the order. Nikki did come to court. She made a counter intervention order against me. To this day, I have no idea what she wrote on it. It was suggested that we just sign an undertaking, which is one step below an intervention order. And I wasn't putting the intervention order in place to hurt her. I was putting the intervention order in place to protect myself and the kids. So it made sense for me to just sign this and have her sign it as well. Nikki flat out said she has never hit me during an altercation. If that's true, why would she be apologizing for hitting me? And this was just one of the many occasions that I went through something like this. The Disneyland experience. Nikki said I didn't want them to go, but I offered to come so the girls didn't miss out on the experience. But he knew if I was there, I wouldn't like him filming them so much, so he made co-parenting the issue. This is entirely untrue. The only conversation we had about this was via text, and the closest thing she said to wanting to come was a comment about it being petty that I didn't invite her. I've explained in the previous video why we couldn't go on an overseas trip together and why I wouldn't have invited her. And if the whole filming thing was the issue, then I wouldn't have offered her the trip when she wouldn't allow us to go. The reason I offered her the trip is because my kids are much more important to me than anything else, and I didn't want them to miss out on this. Dad group situation, Nikki said that we'd only ever been there once. That's not true. Nikki said I've been exploiting the kids. There's no truth in that. Yes, my job over the years has been YouTube. It's how I provided for my family, both when I was married and after my marriage. And when I was married, Nikki never had an issue with the kids being in the vlogs. It's something that came up after we broke up. If you've ever watched my vlogs, you would know how much my kids love being in the videos. Over the years, we've got to have so many amazing experiences because of YouTube. We've got to do things that we wouldn't have otherwise got to do. Either we wouldn't have been able to afford them, or they've just been once in a lifetime type opportunities that we've been very blessed to have. We have a lot of fun making our videos. If you know me, I'm a big kid, and the happiest I ever am is when I'm doing fun stuff with my kids. Over the years, I have checked in with the kids and asked them time and time again, is this what they want to do? And they always say yes. I've always had the attitude that if it gets to the point where it's not fun anymore, that's when it ends. Or if the kids ever say that they don't want to do it anymore, that's when it ends. And they're at an age where they will tell me, hey dad, make sure you edit that bit of the video out. Or hey dad, make sure you keep that part in the video, and they will check to make sure that I keep the bits that they like in the video in there. They love watching the videos back. They love bragging to people about the fact that we are YouTubers. So us not being able to make videos anymore, it hasn't just been hard on me, it's been hard on them too. And the money that I've made over the years from YouTube has gone towards providing for them, towards keeping a roof over their head, towards their education, and sadly towards legal fees that I have had to spend money on to remain a real father in their life. YouTube has allowed me to be a stay-at-home, work-from-home dad, and while going through this whole battle to be a 50-50 dad, something that was used against me was the fact that I used to work a lot. So I've had to have a job where I can show and prove that I can be a dad who can make all the school runs, pick them up, drop them off to school, and be able to take them to activities and everything that I need to do as a dad. And YouTube allowed me to do that. And that's also why I started driving Uber, because it was a job that allowed me to still do that. And I still live with this fear that I could potentially lose my ability to be a 50-50 dad. And that's why it's been so important to me to have a job where I can remain fully present in their lives. The situation with her booking a dental appointment on my 40th birthday during the time that she thought I was going to have the kids, as you can see, she texted me 20 minutes after making that appointment, and it wasn't a dental emergency like she said. She said at this point that Zoe hadn't really been complaining of any pain and that the kids were due for checkups. So we did end up getting an infected tooth, but this was after the fact. Neither of us knew anything about that at this point in time.
I'm a great dad, Nikki, and I feel
No,
like
but you feel like I'm like punishing you for some reason by having the kids go to school, and that's what like I can't wrap my head around.
it's not even
I think that's a punishment.
well, if
Like,
that was
they
the case,
clearly
why
have to
would
go
you
to school.
keep me from even knowing where Ava goes to kinder? Like, do you know how hard it was?
That's for my own safety. I don't trust you 100%. Like, let's be real. Let's be
Over the
100%
years, the
honest
only
about
person
that.
who's ever been violent is you. Like, there's no
Yeah, well,
reason
I'm
for
just
you to
saying.
not trust me. Like, what have I ever
Because you
done?
have a whole lot more to lose than me, yeah? Like, I have a whole lot more to lose than you, is what I'm saying.
But there's
like,
nothing.
you don't have family, you don't have friends, like, you're kind of depressed right now, whatever. You know, you don't have your kids, like, you can act up.
Comments that Nikki made about depression and me essentially having nothing left to lose, or her having a lot more to lose than me. Nikki said before he pressed record, he was calling me crazy and said I needed psychiatric help, and he was threatening to take full custody of our kids. None of this was true. I've never threatened to take full custody of the kids, and none of this happened. I had the full conversation And before this, I'd been asking her how we could get to the point where we could co-parent. And I'd also been talking to her about a person that the kids had been left alone around that I wasn't entirely comfortable with. And that's what was happening before this. I don't want to share that recording because I don't want to put another person's business out there. She said that I took the YouTube channel. So the night that I found out everything about her and her ex-boyfriend, I was in an emotional state and I changed the password. We ended up discussing it at a later point and we agreed that I would maintain the main channel because that had always been my channel. I had started it years before and I had been the one who had done the majority of the work on it. And I explained this in the previous video, so I won't get into that again. And she would get the Jamie and Nick's Instagram account with 1 million followers, which was always essentially hers, even though I created it in the beginning. And she would keep her own personal channel, which she now has. There was also an agreement that we would split the revenue from the old videos 50-50, which I would have always honored. I just never got the contract. I had been asking her for the contract and it just never came. And at this point in time, our divorce was pretty messy and I didn't feel comfortable giving her money without a contract. In the end, she demanded I take down all the old videos so that my channel would have a crutch, and I did that. I was trying to avoid the drama. In the months that the old videos stayed up, the revenue that was made from those ended up going towards joint bills of ours that she was refusing to put money towards. Nikki said that I changed the password to our business email account so that she could no longer access brand deals. She's entirely twisting the truth here and she knows that I have these receipts. This is what happened on the day that I posted my first YouTube video back. She changed the password to our business account and it backfired on her. And I tried everything I possibly could to find a fair way that we could both share that email. I asked her to sign a contract saying that she wouldn't change it again, that she wouldn't alter any emails addressed to me, that I also wouldn't do the same. She refused. And for years onward, I would forward every email that was sent to that account to her, and I was still open to sharing that account with her, providing I had a legal contract that protected us both. Over the years, I'd been the one who had managed this email account and a lot of the contacts in there, but I wanted to share it with her. Nikki said that my mum testified against her in court. My mum has never testified against Nikki in court, nor has she lied about her. Nikki said I kept dragging her through the court system. This wasn't true. I tried everything I possibly could to avoid going through the courts and resolving things outside of court. Nikki was a no-show for 2 mediations. And if you've been through the mediation process, you know how dragged out that whole thing is. And we had to go through this twice. Then Nikki eventually was the one to file the court proceedings. When we went through the court system, by 2021, we had reached an agreement that had me having the kids 50% of the time and that we would split what was left of our finances 50-50. Earlier on, I had split what finances we had 50-50. Nikki wanted more. After we came to this agreement, there was some things that we needed to do for the court that Nikki continued delaying doing, which meant we went to multiple court dates where nothing happened and more money was spent. And I spent probably 3 times what I should have spent by 2021 when we had reached that agreement. Now let's talk about school. Nikki said that she has been left with all the kids' school expenses. This isn't true. I pay 50% of the kids' school fees, as you can see. This is my receipt. I actually pay a little bit more than 50% because I pay for extracurricular activities in full. There was only one time where I ever, I guess you could say, dragged Nikki back to court. So Nikki had originally wanted to enroll Ava into a specific private school from the start of school, and she had told me about this school and it sounded great, But I really wanted to be involved in the decision-making process and told her that I would go and do my research and let her know what I thought. I went, I did my research, the school sounded great, and I told her, let's do it. Let's try get her in there. At this point in time, she had changed her mind and she enrolled her in another school without my consent. She had, however, made an agreement with me that if I could get a spot for our kids in the school we originally liked, that they could go there. And there was an agreement in place that if we ever could get them in, they could go there. And over the years, she tried to sabotage them getting in by not going to open days with me or not responding to correspondence from the school. And somehow, miraculously, I managed to get them in. At that point, she refused to co-sign the enrollment papers for this school. She didn't want them in a school that she had to pay part of the fees for. And I ended up having to take her to court, which was a long and expensive process, to enact court orders to have her sign papers. And you have to remember, she had already made an agreement. She was going to do this. She was just refusing to do it. And she had refused to follow a lot of court orders over the years, but this was the one that I felt like I had to put my foot down on because it was around the kids' education and I wanted them to have the best possible education that they could have. Nikki said in 2020, I tried getting back together with her because my views were low. I think anybody reading that can tell how ridiculous that sounds. It is true that about a year after I left her, I had a weak moment. I was in a very broken place. I desperately missed my kids. My life had been made very difficult, and I decided to give her another chance. And I said, do you want to give this a go? She ended up saying no, and she's tried to use it against me. But I want you to think about something. If I had been so desperate for views from some kind of love story, wouldn't I have just rushed into another public relationship? The last thing I'm going to talk about is the video of Nikki at my house and what happened. Nikki said that she had come to my house to get clothes and that I'd been calling her all sorts of names, and that's how all that happened, and what she was doing was reactive. So at this point in time, Nikki had already moved out of the house and things were pretty rocky. Our marriage counselor at the time had advised me to send her a text and say, I think we should spend 2 weeks apart, not talking about anything other than the kids, because everything was just leading to arguments. And I felt like we needed a clear head and some time apart so that we could get together and speak rationally. And I sent her this text message. She had liked it, so I assumed she had agreed to it. And the point she came to my house was 1 week after that, so we hadn't finished our 2 weeks apart. She had called my mum that morning and let her know that she was going to be dropping Zoe off at the house. Ava was already there. And I had only found out about 10 minutes before she got there. My mum had passed on the message. Now, when Nikki got to the house, I was laying on the couch. She walked in, she dropped Zoe off, and she asked me to come out the front and speak to her about some things. I said, it's only been a week. We've still got another week to go. And she said, I want to talk now. We're going to talk. Get outside and talk. And I kept refusing. And she picked Ava up. She walked up the stairs. She took her up to her room because I guess she didn't want her seeing all of this. And as she was going up the stairs, she told me, if you're not outside ready to talk to me by the time I get down these stairs, I'm going to punch you in the effing head. And I wasn't budging. And she came storming back down the stairs. I was still on the couch. She got on top of me. She hit me multiple times. And my mum picked up Zoe and she took her to the kitchen and she was getting her out of that situation and was getting her some snacks to keep her calm. And at that point, Nikki went through to the other room, and that's when I picked up the phone. I was at a point in time where I was finally starting to tell some of the people in my life some of the things I had been experiencing that I hadn't told people before. And it felt like nobody believed me. So I felt like I needed some evidence. I also needed it for myself as well. For anybody who's been in a situation like this, who's had a person tell you things that happened, never happened, you would know not only the frustration you feel, but the questioning you feel of your own reality. And that's what I was going through, because she had been telling me for years things that had happened, never happened. And I needed to know that this really was happening. I needed to be able to prove it. And that's why I recorded that moment. And I was going to call the police, and I got talked out of it. I never did. She stayed at the house for another 3.5 hours. There was a lot of ranting. It was a really full-on day. Other people ended up at the house as well. And I later found out that the reason that she was so angry when she got to the house was she was dropping Zoe off, because after she dropped Zoe off, she was going to go and have a confrontation with someone who was an old friend of hers, who had been sharing some stories about her and her ex-boyfriend around the Sudanese community. And at this point in time, I hadn't heard any of these stories that had been spread around the Sudanese community. I'd found out some stuff myself, but I didn't know about any of this other stuff that was going on at this point in time. I do have a recording of this. I'm not getting other people involved. It can be verified, and that's why she was at my house that day and why she was in such a volatile mood, because she was blaming this old friend of hers for the things getting out that I guess she had for a while been worried that I was going to find out about. And that's what happened that day. There's one more thing that I wanted to address before I end this video, and that was Nikki saying that I refused to give her footage of her sister. So a couple of years after we broke up, she asked me for some specific footage of her sister. Now bear in mind, this was very, very old footage. We've had a lot of hard drives over the years. Some have been damaged, some have been lost. And I looked for that footage and could not find it, and assumed that it was long gone. Things between Nikki and I were very volatile. I didn't want to be the one to have to tell her that it was gone. So I took the coward's way out, and I just didn't respond because I didn't want to deal with the reaction. And then it was about a year later, I was going through one of my really old MacBooks. I was looking for something unrelated, and I stumbled across that footage that she'd been looking for. I also stumbled across the session file for the video I had made for her funeral. And when I opened the session file, there was quite a few bits and pieces missing, like the music and some unlinked video files and stuff. And I managed to piece that back together, and I mixed that down. And she does now have all of that footage. She doesn't know that I remade that video. The only way she would know is if she was to right click on the file. I think it's called Sarah's Smile, and she would see that it is actually a new copy. It's not the original, because I had to mix it down again for her. In terms of the vlogs, Nikki didn't ask for our vlogs until about 3 years later. She actually didn't ask for our vlogs. She said she didn't want our vlogs. She specifically wanted the raw footage of everything. 3 years later, during points where we're just going through all this mess, I didn't know why she was suddenly demanding specifically the raw footage of everything we had ever done. I didn't have all of it, but it still seemed suspicious. So that is what she's talking about there. Anyway, this is the last I'm going to speak on any of this stuff. As I said, I won't be responding to anything else. I'm done.